Welcome back. I'm Kate and this is Iran Daily Newsfeed. On this day 20 years ago, 19 militants associated with the Islamic extremist group called Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 airplanes and carried out suicide attacks against targets in the United States. 2 of the planes were flown into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. A 3rd plane hit the Pentagon and the 4th crashed in a field in Pennsylvania. Almost 3,000 people were killed during the 9/11 terrorist attacks. These attacks caused extensive death and destruction and triggered an enormous U.S. effort to combat terrorism. Washington announced the start of a war on terrorism by invading Afghanistan to eliminate the Taliban terrorist group that had given refuge to Al-Qaeda. But after nearly 20 years, Democrat Joe Biden's unplanned and irrational departure from Afghanistan gave the country to the Taliban and revived terrorism. We, Iran Daily Newsfeed, and our colleagues in ICBPS offer our deepest condolences to the people of the United States and the families of the victims of the terrorist attacks of 9/11 and around the world. Now let's begin today's news. A group of Iranians gathered outside the building of BBC in London in protest of its biased news coverage and fake news. Iranian patriots, mostly monarchists, carrying the one and only Iranian lion and sun flag and the images of the late Shahs, Mohammad Reza Shah and Reza Shah the Great. They gathered in front of BBC on Friday and called the so-called news agency a propaganda platform for Islamofascism. The people held the rally to show their outrage at the Ayatollah's news agency and said that we are fed up with Tehran's propagandist machines, mostly located in Britain. The British Broadcasting Corporation, also known as Ayatollah BBC, plays a major role in Iran's politics, as well as it adeptly uses techniques to control and guide its audiences in a way that its agenda has been determined. Just before the last moment, when an important event like the presidential election happens, or while a nationwide protest spreads in Iran, BBC tries to engage the issue and attempts to strike it out in favor of mullahs against the people of Iran. Examples of BBC Persian promoting the Iranian regime are so abundant that the Iranian Twitter users created the hashtag called #AyatollahBBC to express their disappointments and despondency with this media. As an example of the unprofessionalism of BBC Persian, we can call attention to the case of BBC Persian being accused of promoting the Iranian regime's homophobic views, with the post calling the LGBTQ families as homophobic slurs and an abomination. In the early hours after the downing of the Ukrainian flight Papa Sierra 752, the journalist at the BBC recognized right away that the cause of the crash was a technical defect. BBC Persian tried to influence and tamper public opinion after they had previously portrayed the criminal downing of a passenger flight as a human error. They invited an unknown individual as an expert who gave a monologue of some unrelated talking points as expertise, making sure not mentioning the downing of a passenger flight by the IRGC. The so-called expert tried to portray those who were killed during the bloody November as mobs who must be tried, as well as those snipers who mistakenly killed some protesters. Iranians say British taxpayers should know that their money is used to propagate on behalf of a totalitarian, anti-Western terror regime. In a tweet, Iranian intellectual Dr. Naid Ghani has called on other London-based Persian media, Iran International and Manato TV, asking, "Why did you not cover the news of the rally against BBC? Do you have your colleagues back and look out for them? Or it's not a piece of news related to Iran? Or it has not been your concern at all?" The Minister of Education announced that 25% of the country's students dropped out of school due to a lack of smartphones. He stated in this regard that 25% of the students in Iran do not have access to a smartphone, even for 1 hour during the night, and this means that they really will drop out of school. Such cases will be harmful for decades. Reported by IRGC Iran Tazim News, the chief of anti-trafficking headquarters in Iran said, the Ministry of Health has imported TV tables and chairs by the medical care subsidy cap. In a TV show, Ali Muayyedi said, unfortunately, the Ministry of Health had spent part of the subsidy cap that should have been allocated for emergency medicines needed by incurable patients amidst pandemic have been spent on the import of tables and chairs. Meanwhile, the spokesperson of the Parliament Committee on Economics says 20% of subsidized medicines imported have been smuggled to neighboring countries. This is when journalists affiliated with the Islamic Republic and regimes, lobbyists abroad have always pointed a finger at sanctions as a cause of medicine and food shortages in Iran. The vice president of the Association of Petroleum Industry Engineering and Construction Companies predicted that the upcoming winter would be the worst year due to extreme gas shortages, and even gas imports from Turkmenistan would not work. Meanwhile, the Islamic Republic sent gas, oil, and fuel to Assad's regime and Lebanese proxies, and this is when the Iranian citizens are facing fuel shortages. And that was all for today. I'm Kate, and thank you for the privilege of your time.